Alright, let's try this. Create an interactive Pokedex with the first 50 Pokemon, including their animation and stats. Are you serious? This is way too easy. Alright, what about this? Create an interactive view of the night sky with the top constellations. Look at that! No freaking way! Alright, here's an even harder one. Create a 3D visualization of Hong Kong. In the left column, list top tourist destinations and navigate to the location upon click. Okay, you've got to be kidding me. Everything looks correct and this is so smooth. This is really next level. Alright, next I'm going to upload the quarterly earnings report of Google, Nvidia, and Amazon into here, and then turn this into a report with graphs and charts. Oh my god, this is way too easy. It made all of this in just seconds. Next, let's leave the creativity to it. So I'm going to write, give me an insane interactive visualizer with multiple shapes, colors, and effects. I don't know what it's going to give me, but let's see what happens. Whoa. What in the world? This is crazy. So Google recently dropped Gemini 2.5, and this is seriously impressive. It's the most capable model I've used so far. But don't take my word for it, it's currently ranked number 1 in all the top AI model leaderboards, across multiple categories, meaning it's the most intelligent, most performant AI model out there. But is this really the case? In this video, I'm going to show you where and how to use it, plus I'll show you some insane things it can do. And of course, we'll go over its specs, performance, and benchmarks. But that's boring stuff, so we'll leave it till the end. Let's jump right in with the demos. Thanks to Hubspot for sponsoring this video. So currently there are 2 places to use Gemini 2.5 Pro. The first place is gemini.google.com, which I'll link to in the description below. So at the drop down over here, you can now select 2.5 Pro Experimental. Now note that with this Gemini platform, usually if you don't select 2.5 Pro, so for example, let's just select this 2.0 Flash, you have this canvas feature, which allows you to preview the code side by side. So for example, if you get it to create a landing page for my AI consulting firm, note that you can see this code in this canvas window. Plus, once it's done, you can also preview how it would look like. Now, here's the thing. If you select the newest 2.5 Pro, you don't actually see the canvas feature over here. So just keep that in mind. I'm sure they're going to add this eventually. Another place to try this is Google's AI Studio. By the way, both platforms are free to use. So in the model dropdown over here, simply select Gemini 2.5 Pro Experimental. Now, I generally prefer to use this platform because there are other settings that you can adjust. So temperature refers to how creative the AI will be in its response. A lower value makes the response more predictable, whereas a higher value makes it more diverse and creative. And then here, if you turn on structured output, this basically forces the AI to format its response in a structured way. For example, if you only want it to output JSON, or if you only want it to output a data table, then this would be a good toggle to turn on. And then code execution allows it to also execute code in the prompt. And then function calling, if you enable this, the AI can use external tools or APIs to retrieve information. And then here, grounding with Google search is basically web search. So if you turn this on, the AI can fetch the latest information from Google search. And then we also have some safety settings that you can edit. And by the way, Gemini 2.5 Pro has a 1,000,000 token context window. This is basically how much information you can fit in your prompt at once. So 1,000,000 tokens means you can paste in over 700,000 words in your prompt. This is 5 times larger than what other leading AI models can take in at once. We'll talk more about this in a second. Now note that for the leading models out there, including Gemini 2.5 Pro, they can all already do simple stuff like writing an essay or replying to emails or writing a social media post. So what makes the top models particularly useful and better than the other models is its ability to reason and solve more complex problems in coding, math, and science. So that's what I'm mostly going to show you in this video. I'm going to test it on some pretty challenging coding, math, and science prompts to see if it can figure it out. Plus, the awesome thing about Gemini is that it's multimodal, so it can take in and understand multiple formats, including text, audio, images, video, and entire code repos. So I'm also going to show you some audio and image and video processing examples. Anyways, it's super simple to use. You just need to type in your prompt down here. So let's start with this. Create an interactive Pokedex with the first 50 Pokemon. Include their animation and stats. Use CSS, JS, and HTML in a single HTML file. This is a key phrase that I like to use in my prompts in order to keep everything contained in a standalone file. So let's click run and see what that gives us. Note that first of all, it's thinking through its response, because Gemini 2.5 is a thinking model. It uses some compute and time to think through how it's going to answer you to give you the best quality response. So we can click into this and actually see its thinking process. So here, number one, it's understanding the core request, which is to do this. Next, it's planning out the HTML structure. And then here's how it's going to design everything with CSS. And then here's also some JavaScript logic. And notice this, there's even this self-correction and improvements during thought process. So initially it thought to fetch data one by one as the user clicks, but it corrected itself and now it has decided to fetch all 50 Pokemon at once. Here's another initial thought. So at first it just wanted to display static images, but for the prompt I did specify for it to create an animation. So instead it needs to find the animated sprite URL in order to give me an animation of each Pokemon. So afterwards, if you scroll down, here is the response. And it gives me this long piece of code. So afterwards, we just need to click this to download the HTML. And then once I open up the HTML, here is our Pokedex. And this is perfect. Indeed, number one is Bulbasaur, and then here is Ivysaur, here is Venusaur, and then we have Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard. All of these look correct. How awesome is that? And for each one, it does list all the stats down here. This is beautiful. So there you go. In just one prompt, 0 shot, we have a fully working Pokedex with the first 50 Pokemon. Let's see, where's Pikachu? It should be 25, and indeed, 25 is Pikachu. Alright, next I'm going to start a new chat by clicking here, and here's the next example. I'm going to show you how to create a 3D printable model from a sketch. So first of all, I'm not actually going to use Gemini 2.5 Pro. I'm going to use this Gemini 2.0 Flash with image generation capabilities. And then for the output format, I'm going to select images and text. By the way, this is one of the best image generators and editors out there. So if you're not familiar with this Gemini 2.0 image generator, definitely see this video to learn about all the cool things it can do. Anyways, for this, I'm going to upload this sketch of a house, and then I'm going to write, make a 3D rendering of this house on a white background. Let's click run and see what that gives us. Alright, so here is our 3D house. So I'm just going to download this, and then next I'm going to start a new chat, and then I'm going to select Gemini 2.5 Pro over here. Now, because this is multimodal, it can take in and understand images. So I'm going to upload the image that we just generated. And then for the prompt, I'm going to write the open SCAD code for this house. The model will be 3D printed. Let's press run and see what that gives us. So again, it starts by thinking through how to answer its response. All right, so if we expand its thinking process, you can see first it's understanding the goal, then it's analyzing the image, and it's breaking down the house into primary geometric components. And then it's also estimating the dimensions of each component, and then it's developing the code. So afterwards, it gives us the code, and all we need to do is copy this. And then I'm just going to open a free online SCAD viewer. I'm going to get rid of this and then paste in all of the code that it generated. And voila! So in just a few seconds, Gemini has turned a really rough sketch of a house into a 3D render, and then into this legit 3D model which can be printed out. How insane is that? Now, this is not perfect, it's missing some windows, plus there's a door hanging over here for some reason, but we can always prompt it further to refine this model. Alright, I'm gonna start a new chat, and let's try something even crazier. So the prompt is create a 3D visualization of Hong Kong, make it interactive. In the left column, list top tourist destinations and navigate to the location upon click. Use 3box and 3.js. So 3box is basically a 3D map rendering tool, and then 3JS is basically a JavaScript library for rendering 3D assets. And then again, this is the key phrase I like to use CSS, JS, and HTML in a single HTML file. And that's pretty much it. Let's click run. All right, so if we expand the thought process, it's first understanding the request, identifying the key technologies it needs to generate the code. It's also finding the tourist destination data and then finding the name, the coordinates, etc. It's handling errors, and then it's also refining and actually testing it. So it seems like it's test clicking on each list item and verifying if it navigates correctly and is the animation smooth. So afterwards, it gives us all this code. So I'm just going to scroll all the way down here and then download this to save the HTML in my computer. Now, let me open the HTML that I just downloaded. And when I first open this up, it says, warning, replace your Mapbox access token with your actual Mapbox token. So because 3box.js uses Mapbox, I do need to create an account in Mapbox first. I do get a decent amount of free usage. And then afterwards, I need to create a token. So let me do that right now. I'm going to name this test and then scroll all the way down and then click on create token. And then afterwards, I'm going to copy this. Do not share this token with anyone, by the way. And then for the HTML, which I just downloaded, let me right click this. And then you can open this with Notepad or whatever code editor you want. I'm going to open this in VS Code. And then down here, I do need to replace this with my actual Mapbox token. So let me paste this in here and then press save. So now if I refresh this page again, everything should work. All right, so here we have a full 3D map of Hong Kong. And then if you click on each one, let's click on this Victoria Peak attraction first. It actually navigates to Victoria Peak. All right, next let's try this one. Oh my God, that's crazy. And the animations are so smooth. Next, let's try this Wong Tai Sin Temple. And now it's navigating to the temple. And the locations are correct. Let's go to this big Buddha. And indeed, it's zooming out and then zooming in to the Buddha statue. And then let's try Disneyland. And indeed, here is Disneyland. How cool is that? So in just a few seconds, you can create a full interactive 3D map. So for example, you can easily make an app for hiking trails or tourist destinations or restaurants or whatever. This is such a powerful tool. Speaking of Google's Gemini, if you find yourself spending hours manually researching topics but only scratching the surface, I've got something that will completely transform how you approach research and information gathering. Take a look at how to do 10 hours of research in 20 minutes. The Marketer's Guide to Google Gemini and Notebook LM by Hubspot. I put it in the description below for you to download for free. This guide will help you become a top 10% expert in any topic in days instead of months by leveraging AI research tools that compress what used to take hours into just minutes of work. You'll be able to process more sources than your entire team and spot patterns across information that humans typically miss. Inside, you'll find step-by-step instructions for using Gemini's deep research capability to gather comprehensive information from dozens of sources, plus how to use Notebook LM to transform that raw data into actionable intelligence through AI-powered summaries and even personalized audio overviews. My favorite section is where they outline 11 practical applications for this research stack, including everything from content creation to competitive intelligence and crisis communication planning. The examples show exactly how to implement these tools in real marketing scenarios. This resource was made by Hubspot, who's sponsoring this video. Again, download it for free via the link in the description below. Alright, I'm going to start a new chat, and then this time, let's leave the creativity to it. So I'm not going to specify a lot of details. The prompt is, give me an insane interactive visualizer with multiple shapes, colors, and effects. Make it interactive. Use Three.js, and then use CSS, JS, and HTML in a single HTML file. Let's click run and see what that gives us. So notice I just told it to give me an insane visualizer in capital letters, but I didn't really specify what that visualizer would look like. So it's free to kind of think of how insane it can make this. So here's its thought process. The user wants an insane, yes in capital letters, interactive visualizer. So it needs to have all of these elements. So it's now setting everything up. It's adding insanity, including multiple shapes and colors. And then it goes ahead and gives me the code. Okay, so I'm just gonna download this HTML code and then open it and see what we get. Whoa! Holy smokes! This is already pretty insane indeed. And then if I hover my mouse over each thing, it does kind of like make the object bigger. And then yes, I can zoom in, I can move around. That is so cool. What if I zoom out? Okay, so it seems to be this giant sphere of all these objects. Wherever I hover my mouse, the stars kind of bounce away. Very cool. And if I hover over some objects like this, then it kind of zooms in on the object. I hope you can see this properly. Very cool, but let's make it even more insane. So I'm gonna write add even cooler visualizations and effects without importing external dependencies. Let's press enter and see what that gives us. All right, so here's our response. Here's the thought process. So it's thinking of how we can add even more to this. And then here it says, okay, let's crank up the insane factor. And then afterwards, it gives me this code. So let me download this. And then I'm gonna open up the HTML. Whoa. Holy smokes! What the hell is this? That is crazy. Holy smokes. What just happened here? Oh my god, this is pretty insane. And then notice, like for these objects, if I hover over each of these objects, notice that they zoom in and they turn hollow. That is so cool. It even has some glitch effect. And when I click into this cloud, it disperses into this really cool, I don't even know how you describe this, but it just looks really cool and insane indeed. What a crazy visualizer. Oh my gosh. This is definitely the most insane visualizer that I've gotten any AI to create. All right, enough fun. Let's move on to the next prompt. Now, throughout my videos, I try to show you actually useful applications for these AI models. So instead of just, rotating cubes or fun visualizations, here's an actual useful application for this. You can get it to create interactive educational content like this. So here's the prompt. Make an interactive educational page that teaches the following: triangle sum theorem, Pythagorean theorem, Heron's formula for triangle area, and then include interactive visualizations for each one. This is another key phrase I like to use, and then use CSS, JS, HTML in a single HTML file. Let's click run and see what that gives us. All right, here's what we get. So here is its thought process. It's designing the HTML. Right now it's styling it with CSS. It's implementing the JavaScript for the animations. And then here's what I really like about it. You can see this refinement and review stage where it actually reviews, are the explanations clear? Is the formula presented correctly? For interactivity, does it respond smoothly? Are the ranges on the sliders appropriate? And then for error handling, does it handle invalid triangles gracefully, etc., etc.? And then again, it's also correcting itself. So through this self-correcting process, you can see how its answer can be way better and higher quality than if it just spits out everything at once, which we've seen with non-thinking models. Anyways, here is the HTML page, so I'm going to download this and then open it in our browser. And here we go. So here's the interactive triangle geometry explorer. First, let's look at the triangle sum theorem. So the sum of all three angles in a triangle should equal 180. So let's see if this is correct. So as I drag angle A into different values, note that the sum of all the angles are still 180. Same with angle B. If I drag this to different values, it's still 180. Very nice. And then for Pythagorean theorem, we should all know this formula, so let's see how this works. If I drag side A like this, then the hypotenuse would be this. So it follows this formula no matter what the values of side A or side B are. And then here's Heron's formula, which looks something like this. You can adjust the sides of this triangle and it would calculate the area and the perimeter in real time. And of course, you can also prompt it further to refine the design or add more features to this. A very useful tool for education. All right, next, let's see if it can build a really cool app. I tried this prompt with Manus, the AI agent, as well as Claude Sonnet 3.7, as well as Grok 3 and O3 Mini, and none of them could actually pull this off. So here, the prompt is create an interactive view of the night sky with the top 20 constellations. Include labels and make it interactive. Use Three.js, use CSS, JS, HTML in a single HTML file. Let's click run and see what that gives us. Alright, so first, if we expand its thought process, it has to decide on the core tech to use, including the scene, the camera, lighting, controls, etc. And it also has to decide how to represent the night sky. And then afterwards, it also has to set up a coordinate system in order to actually represent the stars and the correct positions, as well as the constellation shapes. So after doing all of this, again, this is a really complex prompt that none of the other leading models could get correctly in just one go. So afterwards, it gives me this HTML file. So let me scroll down and find the download button, and then click on this to download the HTML. So let's expand this and see what we get. And holy smokes, here is indeed an app of the night sky with the top constellations. How insane is that? So the only thing I know is the Big Dipper. Let me try to find it in here. Aha, and here we go. Here is the Big Dipper. Do you see this? That's the Big Dipper right there. And I think I also know Orion, which I think I saw it a moment ago. Where is Orion? And here is Orion, and that does look like the shape of Orion. And if I zoom out, you can see this. How cool is that? So you can see the middle is like Earth, and then here we have all the stars surrounding Earth like this. This is such a cool visualization, by the way. This is the first AI that can pull this off zero shot. Now, I'm sure you can refine it further, like perhaps some of the constellation shapes are not correct, and perhaps you want to add a realistic texture to this Earth. I'm sure after like 2 or 3 more prompts, this can be even better. But there you go. Here is an interactive night sky viewer, zero shot. Alright, now again, I try to show as many useful examples as possible, so you can get a sense of what you can actually use Gemini 2.5 Pro for in real life. So let's try this. I've downloaded PDFs of the quarterly earnings report of Google for Q4 2024, as well as the same one for Nvidia and for Amazon. Now, because this is multimodal, it can understand and analyze text, images, audio, video, and documents. I'm going to upload all 3 reports onto here. And notice that it also identifies the token count. So this report has used up over 3,000 tokens. This one is 2,500, as well as this one. And you can also see the token count over here. Again, note that 1 million tokens is over 700,000 words. So you can upload a ton of documents onto here for it to analyze at once. This is just a really rough example, so I'm just uploading 3 quarterly earnings reports. But in theory, you could upload like all the reports from all the companies on NASDAQ, for example. Anyways, for the prompt, I'm going to write, turn this into a report with graphs, charts, or visuals. Make the page responsive. Make sure the visuals fit nicely. Use a single HTML file only. This is another key phrase I like to use, so that it fits nicely on screens of different widths. Alright, so over here, if you expand this, it's first identifying key information, and then it's extracting everything, and it's comparing all 3 companies. And again, here is some self-correction. So initially, I might just plot raw numbers, then I'd realize displaying this millions isn't as readable as this. So it has added additional JavaScript functions to format these numbers appropriately. Similarly, it has also decided to add consistent color coding for each company across different charts for readability. Alright, so afterwards it has given us this code. So let me just scroll down and then download the HTML and then open up the report. And here we go. Here is a report consolidating the 3 PDFs from 3 companies. So here is Google. Here are all the financial highlights. It even has this interactive pie chart showing its revenue and operating income. And then here is Nvidia. Here's the revenue performance by various segments. And then here we have Amazon. Here is net sales and operating income. And finally, the fun part is consolidating all the information together. So here's the revenue comparison of all 3 companies. Note that it's even color-coded nicely. So Alphabet is in blue, and then Nvidia is in green because its logo is in green, and then Amazon is yellow because its logo contains yellow. Very nice. So that was the Q4 revenue. Here's the full year revenue, as you can see here. Here's the Q4 net income. Here's the full year net income, and then here's the operating margin. And I'm sure you can prompt the AI further if you want to add more specific graphs or data tables to this report. But there you go. In just a few seconds, you can just upload a ton of PDFs for it to analyze and consolidate information, and you can get it to create a nice looking report like this. I hope you can see how useful Gemini 2.5 Pro can be. Alright, next, let's try a biology simulation. So in previous videos, I've simulated an ant colony, I've simulated a colony of bacteria evolving. This time, let's try a bee colony. So for the prompt, I'm going to write simulate a bee colony collecting pollen from flowers, include many adjustable settings, include stunning visuals, and then make it interactive and educational. These are all key phrases I like to use in my prompt. And this time, instead of Three.js, I'm going to use p5.js. This is another useful library for creating animations. So let's click run and see what that gives us. Alright, so the thinking process should be the same as before. In the interest of time, I'm just going to scroll all the way to the bottom and download the HTML. Alright, so let's open this up. Whoa, and they do look like bees. How cool is that? Alright, so let's see what we can do here. There are various settings. So for number of bees, we can increase the number of bees. We can also increase the number of flowers, as you can see here. Bee max speed, this just makes them move faster or slower. And then flower max pollen is, I guess, how much pollen one flower has. And then here we also have pheromones. So like if a bee detects a flower, how much are they going to influence other bees to also follow the same trail? So there are various settings for that. We also have wind. So if we increase the wind strength, the direction of the wind is specified at the top here, and the bees are kind of blown in that direction. Very interesting. And then here it says, click on canvas above ground to add a new flower. Let's see if that works. So I can click on here. Oh wow, indeed it adds a new flower. How cool is that? So there you go. Here is a fully functional bee colony collecting pollen from nearby flowers with a ton of adjustable settings. And it got all of this in just one go, zero shot. A super impressive demo, plus it even generated legit looking bees, legit looking flowers, plus a nice looking beehive. Super cool. Alright, here's another fun and educational example. So let's say you're trying to learn or teach probability. Here the prompt is simulate a probability experiment. Random dice rolls, coin flips, and distributions. Make it interactive and educational. All experiments should have a visual graph. So for here, I've just specified for it to illustrate dice rolls and coin flips. And distributions, I'm being a bit vague here. It can kind of choose whatever it wants, but you can specify whatever topics you want to learn or teach into this prompt. Anyways, let's click run and see what that gives us. In the interest of time, I'm just going to scroll all the way down and download the HTML. And then let me open this up. Here's our interactive probability simulation. So let's start with this coin flip first. If we flip 100 coins, let's see what happens. Very nice. If we flip 69 coins, here is what happens. Or if we flip 4 coins, this is what happens. Anyways, we also have dice rolls. So if we have 2 dice and we roll them 1,000 times, here is the distribution of their sums. Instead of 2 dice, if we set this to 1 and we set the number of rolls to 100, let's run that simulation, and now you can see the distribution is between 1 and 6, and the frequency is like this. And then we also have a normal distribution where you can specify the mean, the standard deviation, number of samples, number of bins. So if we run this simulation, here is a theoretical normal distribution. This can be a really nice resource for you to teach or learn normal distributions and what all these variables mean. Here's another example of uniform distribution. So if we leave the default settings the same and then click on run simulation, here is what we get. So there you go. Here's another really useful educational example. But enough coding and visualization examples, Gemini 2.5 Pro can do even more. So like I said in the beginning of this video, Gemini 2.5 is multimodal, which means it can take in not only text, but also audio, images, and video. So I'm going to start a new prompt, and let's try an image analysis example. I'm going to upload this image from Where's Wally, and then I'm going to write find Wally in this image. Let's click run and see what that gives us. All right, so if we expand the thought process, notice that it's first identifying what Wally would look like, which is wearing a red and white striped shirt with blue jeans or trousers and round glasses. So now it starts to scan the image. So it starts from top left to right, and then it's scanning the middle section, again from left to right. It does notice some objects that are similar. So for example, a red, white striped umbrella, or a character with a red, white striped towel, or a red and white striped beach chair, but it's not Wally. And then it's also cropping the image into multiple sections and then trying to find Wally there. And then finally, after crop 6, in the lower right portion, it finds Wally. And then here it says, okay, I found Wally. Look slightly to the right of the center of the image, just below the horizontal middle line. So if I look just slightly to the right of the center of the image, and then just below the horizontal middle line, indeed, this is Wally. How cool is that? So as you can see, Gemini 2.5 Pro is pretty good at image analysis, even though this scene is really complex with a lot of people and objects. Alright, here's another thing it can do. So because this can analyze videos and because of its huge token window, you can upload entire videos or simply paste in a YouTube link for it to analyze the video. So I'm gonna simply paste the link of my YouTube video into here, and note that this video is around 37 minutes and that only took 650,000 tokens. So this can analyze roughly an hour of video. And then I'm just gonna write summarize this. Let's click run and see what that gives us. Alright, so here's a summary of the video. And indeed, the summary is correct. This is actually what I specified in the video. It even correctly identifies some references that I've placed in my clips, like a scene from the anime Ghost in the Shell. I hope you can see how easy it is for anyone to now summarize podcasts or full-length videos. Speaking of podcasts, here's an example of getting it to analyze audio. So I'm going to upload a short excerpt from a podcast. It's only 33 seconds long. I'll play this for you afterwards, but over here I'm going to write, give me the transcript of this with the timestamps and speakers. Let's click run and see what that gives us. Alright, so here's our transcript with all the speakers. Let me actually play you the clip so you can see if the transcript is correct.
But photo sketches, even abstract ideas, that is the promise behind Omogen.
Yeah.
And that's what we're diving deep into today, this research that's really making this a reality.
This research paper really is a big step forward in AI image generation.
Right.
What makes Omogen so groundbreaking is this unified approach that it takes.
So instead of having like separate AI tools for all these different image tasks, Omogen is kind of like this universal creative engine.
Precisely. And that has big implications for how AI actually understands visuals.
Okay.
And it nailed it. Even some really short words like yeah and right, it was able to identify the speaker and the correct timestamp. So a super powerful tool. Anyways, that sums up my showcase of all the cool things you can do with Gemini 2.5 Pro. I hope this gives you some inspiration of how you can use it. Next, let's go over its specs and performance and benchmarks. So here's their official release page. The really nice thing about this is, like I showed you in the demos, this is multimodal. It can take in and understand text, audio, images, and video, and even entire code repositories. Plus, this has a whopping 1 million token context window. They also mentioned that 2 million is coming soon. And 1 million is huge, and definitely way more than what the other leading AI models offer. So for example, OpenAI's O3 and O1 and Claude 3.7 only offer a context window of 200,000 tokens, whereas DeepSeek R1 has a context window of 128K. So Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro can take in at least 5 times more data in your prompt compared to the other leading models. For your reference, 1 million tokens is roughly equivalent to 1 hour of video or 11 hours of audio or 30,000 lines of code. You can easily plug in a decent-sized code base into here, or this is also 700,000 words. So you can plug in an entire novel or tons of documents for it to analyze all at once. Now, how good is this? In other words, if you feed it so much information at once, can it actually take in all that information and analyze it and give you the correct answer? And that brings us to this benchmark called Fiction Live Bench. So a lot of AI models struggle with digesting a lot of information like long stories or a ton of documents at once. They often lose track of plots or characters if you feed it an entire story. So the point of Fiction Live Bench is to test a model's ability to actually find and analyze information from really long stories. So note that for the longest stories of 120K in length, note that Gemini 2.5 Pro got 90.6, which is by far better than all the other models. I mean, the closest one is 65.6, which is the latest version of ChatGPT. So this is a huge margin. Gemini 2.5 performs really well at analyzing a lot of information at once. Alright, moving on to other leaderboards, here we have LM Arena, which ranks AI models based on user blind tests. And you can see that Gemini 2.5 Pro is ranked at number 1. And again, the margin is huge. So note that for the next top 3 models, their arena score only differs by a few points, whereas for Gemini 2.5 Pro, it has a margin of almost 40 points. This is an insane lead over the other models. Plus, if you look at this table where it ranks the different AI models based on these different categories, like hard prompts, coding, math, creative writing, instruction following, longer query, and multi-turn, notice that across the entire board, Gemini 2.5 Pro is ranked at number 1. This is an insane achievement. And then if you look at another leaderboard by this independent evaluator called Artificial Analysis, and if you rank all the models based on their intelligence index, which is basically how intelligent or performant a model is, Gemini 2.5 Pro is ranked at number 1. And if you look at the pricing, you might have noticed that Gemini 2.5 Pro isn't even on this chart. And that's because the cost to use it is $0. How crazy is that? So on AI Studio, if you hover over this 2.5 Pro model card, notice that the input and output per million tokens is $0. And that's because Google has its own tensor processing units, which we'll go over in a second, so they are actually really cost efficient. So not only is Gemini 2.5 Pro the best model out there, according to all these benchmarks, but it's also the cheapest model out there. You can't get cheaper than $0, which is kind of ridiculous to think about. Here's another leaderboard called Math Arena, which, as the name implies, tests AI models on competitive math questions. And again, note that for Gemini 2.5 Pro, it is currently number 1 on the leaderboard with a huge margin compared to the next best model. If you look at another leaderboard called Live Bench by Abacus AI, again note that Gemini 2.5 Pro is ranked at number 1. And again, the margin is huge. If you look at the other leading models in terms of the global average score, they only beat each other by less than 1 point, whereas Gemini 2.5 Pro beats the next best model by more than 6 points, and across the board including reasoning, coding, mathematics, data analysis, and language, it beats all the other models. So this isn't just a subjective opinion. If you get a chance to play around with Gemini 2.5, especially for coding and reasoning and problem solving, I think you'll find that it does have a slightly more intelligent and more performant vibe to it. Here's another benchmark called Humanity's Last Exam, which is a very misleading name. This doesn't mean that when an AI achieves 100%, that humanity is screwed. This is basically testing the AI on some in-depth questions from obscure domains. Now, if you look at this leaderboard, note that again, Gemini 2.5 Pro is the leading model with a score of 18.8%. So I think from all my demos and all these leaderboards, it's not an exaggeration to say Gemini 2.5 Pro is currently the leading AI model out there. And this is actually really impressive because since ChatGPT came out in late 2022, OpenAI had always been in the lead in terms of having the most intelligent or most performant model. In the early days, Google tried hard to catch up, but their early versions of Gemini were pretty bad and way less capable than OpenAI's models. But my oh my, how the tables have turned. Google has not only caught up, but is now leading the AI race by quite a huge margin. But to be honest, this isn't actually too surprising. To train better AI models, you need the most data and the highest quality data. Plus, you need a ton of compute. Well, guess who has all of this? Obviously, Google has the most data of the internet with their Google web search. But this also means they have the most image data in the world as well, with Google's image search. Not only that, but they arguably have the most video data in the world with YouTube. Plus, they also have the most geospatial data in the world with Google Maps. And this includes image data of all the major streets in the world. Plus, location data on businesses, restaurants, public transport, and everything else in Google Maps. No other tech giant even comes close to having the amount and diversity of data that Google has. Plus, throughout all this time, Google has been developing their own processors for AI computing, which they call tensor processing units, or TPUs. So while other AI giants like OpenAI or X or Anthropic need to rely on NVIDIA for compute, in fact, they're all racing to get their hands on the latest NVIDIA processors, which are in really short supply. While they're all doing that, Google doesn't really have this bottleneck. They've built the entire vertical stack from the computing hardware to the AI software, plus they have the most data in the world. So honestly, if I were to bet on who would win the AI race, I would pick Google. So it's not a surprise that their newest Gemini 2.5 Pro is actually leading the AI race, at least as of right now. Anyways, that sums up my review of Gemini 2.5. This is definitely and noticeably the best AI model that you can use right now. If you haven't used it, definitely try it out. I think you'll also find that it just has a slightly more intelligent vibe to it. Let me know in the comments what you think of this, and if you've been playing around with Gemini 2.5 Pro, what other cool and interesting creations were you able to generate from this? As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you, so if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week, I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel, so to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.